Steve Largent here from the Joey and Mickey Pro Football Show studio.
Steve, you're looking great for your age.
Thank you. I don't feel a day over 57 and a half.
This is an awful pretty blue, and can I be a heterosexual man and say it looks very good on you?
You could.
Well, thank you.
Go ahead. Are you going to say it?
I said it, and I mean it.
Excellent. I thought you were just asking if you could say it.
Yes.
Some people think that
I was asking.
The symbol here in the eye of the Seahawk is actually from the Egyptian hieroglyphics. And let me be the first to say that that is a conspiracy theory, and you should never believe conspiracy theories. This is straight out of the playbook. I should also point out that we have our Seattle Seahawks flag up there. Can our camera catch that? Hallelujah. Thank you.
I like that thing. Looks...
Steve Largent. I was a wide receiver, as you know, for the Seahawks back in the days when Dave Craig was throwing passes and I was catching them. Craig was a fabulous quarterback, and let me just say that the rumor that he leads the NFL in times being sacked and times fumbling is a vicious, malicious lie. Don't believe it. Don't believe it, Joey.
So what was he doing? Was he
throwing
cooking?
passes.
Was he cooking dinner for the guys while he was playing quarterback?
No,
It was like a misnomer. I mean,
he was
there's
throwing
pots and
touchdowns
pans out there, or what?
I can't account for the origins of that rumor. All I know is he threw a lot of passes and I caught a lot of them.
You know, forgive me here, Mickey, but I think that the fans of the Seattle Seahawks back then. By the way, '76 was the year that they came into the league, as you probably know, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So
Yep.
This was their original jersey, and to tell you the truth, me and some other people on the set, and I'm not going to name names, seem to think that this was the best uniform out of the 3 or 4 that they've had.
Yeah, isn't it?
I think the colors are absolutely stunning.
Smashing.
But
Thank you.
you know, he did kind of let go of the ball a little bit. But him and Jim Zorn, it's kind of a nice kind of a blur to me, but it's a good blur. All I remember as a child was Steve Largent caught a lot of passes, and I tell you what, you know, one of my heroes, and you know, Jim Zorn was throwing, and then Dave Craig was throwing for him, and you mentioned the flag, and once again, I think that's really sharp. You know,
That's awesome.
If I was living in the Seattle Tacoma area, I think it would be hard not to be a fan, because at least they look better than some teams I know. I happen to be wearing who am I wearing?
Detroit Lions. Oh man, it's the guy who gets 200 yards receiving in many games. We covered this.
Like that's not enough. Yeah.
It's enough for him. It's way too much for
Calvin Johnson.
Calvin Johnson. I know. We talked about him in our review back in May. What's new with Calvin Johnson?
Well, you know, he's making money and you know, he's obviously looking good in bling, and he's Megatron. He's you know, as we last reported, as he was last seen in Kalamazoo catching a pass from Matt Stafford that he threw from somewhere in the downtown Detroit area, and he caught it blindfolded, as we mentioned.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be more of that this season, and maybe he might even have some new tricks up in his bag, but he's definitely going to be good. And always been fond of the Detroit colors myself. It's too bad they lose like crazy, but they look good. Your Bears.
Go Bears.
You know.
The Bears.
I
can't not say that. What do you have to say?
You know, I respect your optimism. You know, you said, I think in the other show, that you know they would get to the playoffs, and so I figured we might as well do a team roster update. Here's the players I think that are very significant, and if there's somebody here you don't like, or there's somebody here you want to talk about, these are the players I think that are really significant to the Chicago Bears this year. Some that have been traded, some that are still there, but you do have Aruma Shadu, which I got to say that name again, at wide receiver.
Gesundheit.
Exactly. Thank you. Lance Briggs, you know, is going to probably. What do you think with your man Urlacher retiring and not going to the Minnesota Vikings? Lance Briggs is going to have to kind of fill that role as leader of the linebackers.
I believe so. Leader of the defense.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see it. He's a key player, but I still say he's a crybaby. Jay Cutler. Roberto Garza is your center and guard, and you know I mentioned him because I really, you know, you tell me, but has he been a pretty solid staple for you guys? I mean, it seems like he has.
Well, first of all, I'd like to point out he's not related to Matt Garza, who was a pitcher. He pitched for the Minnesota Twins. He got kicked around. I think he's in the National League right now. Anyway,
Another Garza?
different Garza, different family.
Okay.
Well, I don't know how good he's been, but the Bears' problem has been with their offensive line and their protection, pass protection of Cutler lately. So that's going to determine really how well the Bears do this year. New head coach, Mark Trestman, new offense, another shot at trying to protect Jay Cutler for a season, and we shall see how it will go. But Garza is going to be a key point in that whole thing.
You know, if you look at the number of rushes that Jay Cutler got last year, I'll go ahead and say that I can't deny that he was hurried on a lot of passes, and so that blind side, like the movie, that blind side offensive tackle that's responsible for protecting his Cutler's right blind side is really key, and so Tim Jennings going down the list here. Devin Hester, you still have kick returner,
Yes.
and you and I talked about in the last show that even though there was speculation in the media that he was going to be used as a wide receiver, they tried that a season or two ago. They've clearly said your new coach clearly said that he's going to go back to just being a kick returner. Tim Jennings is one of your cornerbacks, and you know what? I'm kind of high on the kid. The kid's 29 years old, so he's not a kid anymore. Excuse me, Tim, but I think he's a pretty good cover guy. I don't know if you have any comments about him, but
Well,
Greg Jennings, Tim Jennings.
not him in particular. Yeah, I know this could be another one of those family things, but Jennings is a commoner name than Garza, I think. The Bears last season they returned 8 interceptions for touchdowns, which if it's not a record, it ought to be. It's close to being a record, and it was fabulous. And that was the strength of their team last year, the defense, and they're opportunistic. They will be back again in force. In fact, in a recent Bears practice, we are in early August here. In a recent Bears practice, it happened again. They batted down, I think, 7 or 8 passes by Cutler and returned a couple of them for touchdowns. So it seems like the defense is picking up right where it left off, and so is the offense, Joey.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because that's obviously really fresh, and to hear that unfortunately that's going on. For your sake, I hope that doesn't continue and those problems with conjectory. What am I trying to say? Conjectory and being able to throw over the big guys isn't a problem for Jay Cutler. Let's get back to Luckenbach, Texas. Waylon Jennings is my favorite Jennings, but anyway, Brandon Marshall, Waylon, Brandon. Do you like country at all? Country music?
Yeah, my mom was raised in North Carolina. I grew up listening to the country music that Mom played on the radio.
She was country when country wasn't cool. Right?
Yeah, you could say.
I'm gonna say.
Go ahead.
As long as you agree, I'll say it.
Well, fine. Go ahead.
She's your mama.
It's true.
Brandon Marshall comes back, and you talked a lot about him in the 6-hour show, and actually I want to say that I made a little bit of a mistake. So if there's anybody out there and I'm sure there are some diehard fans, and I love you guys, whatever team you're rooting for, I made a big mistake there. The whole Miami to Luckenbach to Chicago. Okay, he is definitely still in Chicago. Okay,
yes.
so don't take my word for it. Okay, he's not in Miami. He was in Miami, and that's where he had, which was kind of interesting. And I don't know if we really got into that too much, but if you want to, great. And if you don't, I'm gonna back out. But that he came out and said that he had some behavioral. I don't know the exact diagnosis, but he had some depression and behavioral problems in Miami, and that's the reason why he said he was so inconsistent, not only as a player but in his life. Were you aware of that?
No.
And I think old Gina A over there, our producer, I think she, I don't know if she remembers, but we were kind of looking at that, and we were following that story. And you find it interesting at all?
Certainly. Last year he was on the Bears, right? And he's had a ton of
Don't ask me. I already jacked it up once.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's go for this. Say for the sake of argument that he was on the Bears, he had a huge amount of catches, huge amount of receiving yards. Unfortunately, nobody else did. And he's back. Brandon Marshall has talent. He has a ton of talent. It could be that he's naturally a person that prefers cold weather. Hence, Miami was not a good fit for him. What do you think?
I don't know what that's called, but that's certainly possible.
Maybe he's descended from the polar bear line of wide receivers.
That's a possibility too. And the great thing about them was they never had to wear gloves. They were used to catching passes and catching food. And have you ever tried? I mean, could you imagine trying to be a polar bear, Mickey? and you have to survive, obviously, and you're trying to put salmon, cold salmon coming out of a stream, in your midst, and not let them slip off and be able to eat them.
I know.
The bears should be the absolute best receivers.
They should, especially if they were grizzly bears, because polar bears and salmon don't exist in the same ecosystem. But I like the spirit of your argument there.
A polar bear would be punching the ice, I believe, right? We see on Wild Kingdom and
Yeah, going for the seal.
okay, anything that's underneath the ice, right? Yeah. But no, I will say this personally. When the story broke about Brandon Marshall and one of the reasons why he was ousted from Miami, his production was down. That is true, and it was very well known. But I actually respect the fact that he came out and said, "I have a problem," and it's an embarrassing problem for a lot of people. But he said clearly, the depression behavioral problem that I have, I want to get treated, and somebody needs to be the spokesman, and I'm going to go ahead and step forward and be that person.
All right, good for him.
So yeah, because of that, I give him a lot of credit. But Charles Tillman, Julius Peppers. DJ Williams actually came from the Broncos. I think he was traded. And you know what? Living here in the Mile High City, just so you know, and please chime in, but when they were talking about Von Miller and all those guys when they were kind of young, DJ Williams was in that mix. And he got a lot of attention. And then Chicago Bears were able to lure him away from Denver.
Hallelujah.
Okay?
That ought to make him
So,
stronger.
yeah.
Bring up some more talent.
Like I said, Julius Peppers, I mean, does he still have some gas in the tank? He's 33 years old.
He does.
Charles Tillman's a cornerback, and he's 32 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you're going to say he's got gas left in the tank, too.
He's got gas.
He's playing in Chicago.
And when you've got gas, you and your teammates will be very glad you're living in Chicago. Let me say this about depression. A lot of NFL players have a problem with depression around the time when their contract is up, and they realize that they have to play well to get another contract, and yet they're going out and dropping the passes, getting called for holding penalties and all this other stuff. It's a more common problem in the NFL than we really know, Joey. But what can I say? They got to deal with it, and if they get $7 million a year for playing a game, I don't have too much sympathy for them in the first place. But I love the entertainment, so keep them playing. Take some pills. The depression won't get any better. But if you get your contract, it'll completely go away.
Pop a pill and negotiate your contract. If you can't play well, then pop another pill, man. Yeah. I mean, I guess it works, but
it could also be, as the Rolling Stone says, they go running for the shelter of their mother's little helper.
I like it.
Yeah, you know, nowadays
will that be the music bed for a medical marijuana commercial for the NFL?
Well, that doesn't come in a pill form. I don't know. We'll cover that in the next segment, maybe. But you know,
I had a vision.
So that's good. And this was. You're not under the influence at the moment.
Not that I know.
The drug companies are always looking for another way to sell their drugs, and this is another potential market for them. There are 1,600 players or so in the NFL that often get depression around contract time, and so they should probably experiment with prescription drugs for antidepressant.
You know, I'm sure as a player, it's kind of gone like this chronologically.
Or coffee.
You know, my contract is coming up in let's say 3 months, and I'm really worried about it. And so the coach is like riding my ass, and I finally say, "Coach, can I talk to you in your office?" And we go in the first time, and I say, "My wife is having a baby," and he goes, "Well, that's understandable. That's a major thing in a man's life, so it's okay. Just go back out there." And if I continue to have problems and I continue not to play very well, then I say, "Coach, can I see you in the office again?" And then I say, "I'm getting a divorce." "I thought you were having a baby." "Yeah, I'm getting a divorce now." But it's a different woman.
It gets you off the hook.
It gets you off the hook. And how many of those excuses can you give before he finally says, "Hey, man, keep it on the field. Don't bring it on the field, and let's see production. I can't keep vouching for you, right?" Wouldn't you think it kind of goes like that?
Winning is the bottom line in the NFL. Always has been, always will be.
I think that's everybody we want to that we wanted to talk about. That Major Wright would be the last one. The name doesn't it just conjure up things for you, or at least get your interest? Major Wright is a safety.
Was he in the Army? Major General Wright?
Major General.
We're getting a signal from our producer.
Chicago. You're right. Chicago Bears. The
Go Bears.
Adios. Have a good year.